The following is a sponsored program paid for by First Alliance Credit Union. Welcome to Good Money Moves, featuring Jenna Taubel from First Alliance Credit Union and Andy Brownell. Here's Andy Brownell on Rochester's News Talk, 1340 KROC AM and 96.9 FM.
Welcome to Good Money Moves. I'm Andy Brownell, along with Jenna Taubel, Director of Brand and Digital Member Experience with First Alliance Credit Union. Hi, Jenna.
Hey, Andy.
Last week on the program, we talked with Leanne Trum about romance scams. What's the Good Money Moves topic for this week's program?
Yeah, so it's tax time, and in case you didn't know, and I feel obligated to talk about it because it really is just a large financial event that affects basically everyone. But first, I do need to caveat this information to say that I am not a tax professional, and the information that I will be sharing with you is not intended to be advice. It's simply information that I happen to know. So if you need actual advice or you have specific questions about your personal taxes, you should most definitely consult a tax professional.
Disclaimer done.
My disclaimer is done. Yes. So, I mean, for those who don't know, the tax filing season kicked off on January 29th this year, and it officially ends on April 15th, as it does every year. But interesting fact, the IRS expects about 146 million individual tax returns to be filed. That's a ton. And by February 9th, almost just 2 weeks into the filing season this year, they had issued more than $7.4 million in refunds already, which is an average refund of about $1,800 per person.
Yep. I could see if I had $1,800 coming back with a refund, I'd be filing early too.
Yeah, right?
I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum, so I always wait until the last minute.
Yeah. We'll talk about having to pay in today too. So,
I'm good at that. So I guess maybe to start with the very basics of all of this. Why is it that we have to file these nasty tax returns?
Yeah, that's a good question. We have to file tax returns. Well, the answer can get complicated, but the gist of it's actually pretty straightforward. So think about when you begin working for a company, they have you complete like a W-4 form, and the information that you enter on this form determines how much taxes is being withheld from your pay based on if you claim things like dependents or head of household status. So the decisions you make when you set up your payroll withholding by completing this form usually result in either underpaying your taxes, meaning you have to pay up after filing, or overpaying on your taxes, meaning you get a refund after filing. So because your payroll withholding isn't exactly right based on your full financial situation, right? Because you're not necessarily claiming all of your deductions when you have that W-4 form, right?
So there's income that comes in where there was no withholding.
Correct. Yeah. So therefore, you're required to file a tax return every year to come up with kind of that final tally of your complete taxable situation. So you can think of a tax return filing process really just determines whether you owe additional taxes beyond what you've already paid, or if you're owed a refund of taxes that have been withheld. So you might, again, be able to reduce the taxes that you owe and get a refund of those taxes that you've already paid by taking deductions and different credits based on your current tax codes that are happening, right? Those seem to change every year, but
they do.
You might have also additional income during the year that you're legally required to report and from which no taxes have been withheld, like you mentioned.
Yep.
And this can result in you owing the IRS more than you've paid in some cases. But really all that to say, right, the gist of it is that tax filing is this reconciliation process with the IRS to tell the federal government how much income you've actually earned from all sources at once and what deductions or credits that you're claiming you qualify for that year all at once. And then the IRS determines your total tax bill off of that and tells you how much you either underpaid or overpaid for the year.
All right.
That's the uncomplicated version.
It's like balancing the checkbook, except for it's the IRS you're answering to,
Exactly.
not yourself.
Yes.
All right. Makes perfect sense when you explain it that way. But filing is, I don't even care if you get a refund. It's a pain.
It is.
It's
painful.
One of my least favorite things to do.
I think we can all agree.
Yeah. And it's those dang forms. Oh my gosh. Okay. I guess that leads to this question. Is there anything we can do to make it less painful?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely, like you said, never a fun process to go through. And there are definitely some things that you can do ahead of time to help make it feel a little smoother, at least, right? A little less stressful. So starting early, this is important because the less time that you give yourself to file the taxes, the more stressful it's going to feel, especially if you've misplaced a document, right? And you're kind of at the last minute, or maybe you didn't receive one you should have, right? So wait until the last minute just adds a level of stress to the whole situation. So starting early really does reduce the possibility that, if you do misplace something, you have time to find it again or access something that you maybe didn't think you needed, right? And as an added bonus, the sooner you file your taxes, the sooner you'll get any tax refunds that you're owed, right?
I have a friend, and they don't do this anymore, thankfully. But for many, many years, they would wait until April 15th or whatever day the deadline fell on, but it's usually April 15th, to start doing the taxes.
Oh, gosh.
And inevitably, it would be this horrible, horrible day of stress for this person.
Yeah.
Followed by, and this was back before electronic filing, a rush to the post office before they closed to get the form in. It was, why don't you start a little earlier?
Well, that sounds like the next thing that they could have done would be to get organized before they start filing as well. That might help them start earlier, right?
Perhaps, yes.
Because if that's my second tip is to get organized. So if you are a seasoned tax filer, you've probably got a pretty good idea of what documents you should already be collecting or receiving, right? Your W-2s, your various 1098 and 1099 forms that they have. And there's a lot of possible forms and documents, depending on your situation. So it is a great idea to make kind of a checklist of them that you anticipate to receive or that you receive every year. And as you receive them, check them off the list. And once you've got them all, you're ready to file, right? So you just helps to kind of
in the same place too.
Exactly. Yeah. Keep them somewhere safe in a folder, in a file on your desk, wherever it makes sense for you to
shoebox.
Keep it. Sure, a shoebox. But I think the other really important thing to mention is don't be afraid to ask for help if you need it, because taxes can be really confusing. And despite, I say this with a sense of sarcasm, the IRS's best efforts to make it straightforward, it's not always. So fortunately, there are a lot of resources out there dedicated to helping people file their taxes. So, don't be afraid to reach out to a qualified tax professional or even the IRS directly, right? And a lot of times the tax prep software that you use, if you choose to file independently, they've gotten a lot better about kind of prompting you with a series of questions to help you determine whether or not you qualify something or need a specific form. And then, right, based on the answers you give to those questions, it'll tell you need X, Y, or Z. And some of them even offer live support from tax professionals while you're completing the process if you purchase the more expensive software or whatever. But so there is help out there. Don't feel like you have to just know everything. Like, use your resources. And this is where I'm going to have a shameless plug and say that First Alliance members do receive discounts on TurboTax software through the link on our resource center on our website. So that's firstallianceu.com. So
that's handy.
Yeah, save a couple bucks on filing your taxes, never a bad thing.
And keep in mind, as much as during this time of the year we like to hate the IRS, they didn't write the tax code. That was Congress. They're the
Yeah,
ones who are charged with enforcing it and figuring out how to put it together in a usable way.
this is true. This is true.
I had I don't see them anymore, but used to hang out with a group of IRS auditors, and they were some of the nicest people you'd want to know. But um, we're not greeted friendly. Let's put it that way. When they were put to task with what their job was.
Yeah, I can only
can't
imagine.
imagine that. It's like, I didn't write the law. This is what the law is. Here
Right.
it is. All right. So we're talking taxes, tax filing to be specific this week. On Good Money Moves with Jenna Taubel with First Alliance Credit Union. Back in a moment on News Talk 1340, KROC AM and 96.9 FM.
Good Money Moves continues in moments with Andy Brownell and Jenna Taubel from First Alliance Credit Union. This is News Talk 1340, KROC AM and 96.9 FM. We're talking Good Money Moves with Andy Brownell and Jenna Taubel from First Alliance Credit Union on Rochester's News Talk 1340 KROC AM and 96.9 FM.
Welcome back. It's Good Money Moves. Jenna Taubel with First Alliance Credit Union. I'm Andy Brownell, and the topic this week is filing your taxes. Mm-hmm. And it's a timely topic considering the deadline. You think it's that far away, but April 15th is only like 6 weeks away. So
yeah,
that goes by pretty fast. And we've covered why we file the taxes, the purpose of the tax filing. And Jenna, you went through some of the things we can do to make it less stressful.
correct.
And speaking of stressful, what do I do when I find out that my withholding was not enough? And guess what? I have to pay in. I owe taxes.
Oh, yeah. That's never a fun thing to find out, especially if you were not expecting it. So definitely a panic-inducing situation if you were not expecting to have to pay in. But if you do owe money to the IRS, first and foremost, it's usually a good idea to consult a tax professional before you do anything, because there's a variety of ways that you can pay your tax bill. So they may be able to kind of help you figure out what the best solution is for you, depending on how much you owe, and how much, what your exact situation is. So one of the options you can end up with if you owe the IRS money is you can set up a payment plan called installment agreements. And the type of agreement that you can get kind of depends on your specific situation, including, how much you owe and how soon you can pay the balance back in full. That being said, it's, as a general rule, you should not set up an installment agreement if you can pay that balance off within 120 days. And we'll talk about that here in a minute.
Okay, 4 months.
Yep. So you just maybe need a short window of time to repay it. That's different than if you owe thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars and there's no way that you're going to pay that in a short time frame. That's when you may have to look into something like an installment agreement. Okay. But the thing that to keep in mind with this is there are interest charges and other fees involved with this option. And there's a lot of other fine print depending on what kind of agreement you end up with. So if this is where you're at, that's why I say really takes time and consult with a tax professional before you do anything, because you don't want to end up in a situation that's not going to actually work for you to repay that. So I'm not a tax professional, so I'm not going to go much deeper than that into some of these, but just know that there is an option out there for that. So when I talked about, if you can repay it within that 120-day time frame, that's where you can ask for something called a short-term extension from the IRS. So they will provide you with a 120-day extension to pay that tax bill balance in full. And this can be a really convenient option for taxpayers who just do need that short amount of time to kind of pay that back in full. Maybe you owe just $1,000 or a couple $1,000 and you're like, well, I don't have it right now, but I can pay it off in that time frame. But keep in mind,
interest is charged, right?
There's still interest charges there and probably fees involved too. So again, use it if you have to, but just know there's caveats, there's fine print involved. So just know what you're getting yourself into. So another option that I think is important for people to know about too is you can apply for what's called a hardship extension with the IRS. And so the IRS offers this to people who can basically prove they're in a financial hardship and that they cannot pay back that balance, right? So if you qualify, you do have to meet certain qualifications and prove and provide documentation that would prove your financial hardship situation, right? They can, they'll work with you on that. But again, this isn't like forgiving your tax debt completely, right? You can still incur interest on the balance owed over time. They're not like, I don't think the IRS ever says, oh, you don't owe us money. Just kidding. So just know that this isn't like an out, but it is another option for extension. And again, the details of how this work depend again on what your qualifying status is. So,
but all of those options are still better than one of the alternatives, which unfortunately some people do, which is bury their head in the sand and try to ignore the problem.
Don't do that.
Which gets you penalties plus a bunch of other
issues. Yeah, do not ignore it and think it's just going to go away or that they'll forget about it, because they will not. They will, you do have to pay it. And so another option to consider, right, and this is also a very common option, if you don't want to deal with the IRS and the loan rates essentially that they're offering you and the fees that they're telling you have to pay for their extension programs and their payment plans, getting a loan from the credit union is a really great option too. So in a lot of cases, depending on what type of loan and, what you may qualify for, the interest rate's probably going to be better than what you're going to get from the IRS, right? They're not in the business of making loans. They don't want you to have a debt hanging out there. And the IRS typically, they kind of take an interest, which is the short-term Fed fund rate plus 3%. So right now you'd be looking at like 7 or 8% or more, right, currently. And you'll also have more time to pay it off if you go with a loan from like a credit union or a bank overall, because they have much longer terms, right? It's not that 120 days. It's not these short-term options. You can kind of set up a payment plan that's a little more advantageous for your financial situation.
Sure.
So, but all that to say, the best course of action is to pay it immediately if you are able. So again, the IRS is not in the business of making loans. So while they do offer all of these payment options, they would really prefer that you just pay it immediately, which is why they have the high interest rates and all the fees attached to these programs, is because while they do have to make them available to you, it's not what they want to do. They would just want you to pay your bill and move on. So
sure. Great information. Let's talk about the flip side, the happy side.
Yeah.
Fun side, let's call it. What are some of the smart ways? I mean, there's a billion ways I could use my refund. I could blow it on anything, but what are some of the smart ways I could use the refund if I'm getting one?
Yeah. So one quick thing before we dive into that great question. I would just want to remind everyone that your tax refund is not free money the government is just kindly giving out to you. It's money they took from you and is owed back to you because they took too much. And that's why it's called a refund. So if you can think about your tax refund in this context, it will actually help you make better choices with the money you receive back. So this is also why it's important to really use it to better your financial picture and not just like spend it frivolously. So I would say you've got probably, I don't know, I've got 6 options you can kind of think about when it comes to using your refund to make good money moves, we'll say. So one, first and foremost, paying down debt, always a great use for your tax refund. So consider paying off your credit cards first, especially if you have high interest rate cards. If you're close to paying off a car loan, right? Vehicles depreciate quickly. It's always good to own your vehicle outright. Making dents in your student loans or mortgages can be appropriate. However, weigh that consideration because there are tax breaks and things that you can qualify for on the interest you pay on those loans. So that you may want to take that into consideration. Again, consult a tax professional for how that works. But building up your savings is always a smart use for your tax refund. So whether you're going to build up an emergency fund, you want to put some more money into your house savings account, plan for a vacation or down payments on a new car or a house, and putting that money into things like a certificate deposit or a money market account is a really great way to kind of kickstart some of those longer term savings goals for yourself using this nice kind of lump sum of cash that you've just come into. Home repairs, upgrades, always a great idea. But what I mean by that is like stuff that's going to add value to your home, like upgrading your furnace, or doing work on your roof or your flooring, or it doesn't mean like a new couch. Not that if you need a new couch, you need a new couch. But when we're talking about home repairs and upgrades, I'm talking things that add value to your home. So
how about a giant high def TV?
That is not what I would consider a home upgrade. That might be a lifestyle upgrade. That is not a recommended
I had to try.
use. Yeah. Well, good questions, good clarifying questions. Down payments, we talked about, great use to use for that, those funds for that. Investing it, you could use your lump sum tax refund to, could be great seed money to start investing for retirement or college savings. Donate it to charity, right? You can get tax breaks on the following year potentially, but and you get to feel good about helping your community. So if you really don't need the cash, that's another opportunity.
All right. Nowhere on the list did I see a weekend in Vegas.
No, well, I did, to be fair, I did say you could save for a vacation.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, if all else is taken care of, if you've got your debts paid off, you've got your savings built up, you're sitting good there, take your vacation.
That's
what I'll say about that.
We'll be back in a moment. More Good Money Moves. We're talking about your tax filings this year. Jenna Taubel with First Alliance Credit Union. I'm Andy Brownell. This is News Talk 1340, KROC AM and 96.9 FM.
Good Money Moves continues in moments with Andy Brownell and Jenna Taubel from First Alliance Credit Union. This is News Talk 1340, KROC AM and 96.9 FM. We're talking Good Money Moves with Andy Brownell and Jenna Taubel from First Alliance Credit Union on Rochester's News Talk 1340, KROC AM and 96.9 FM.
Welcome back. Good Money Moves. Our topic, filing your taxes. Jenna Taubel with First Alliance Credit Union with us. All good information. A little bit of a buzzkill, not letting me have the TV, but that's okay. But is there anything else our listeners should know about filing taxes?
My kids call me a buzzkill too, so it's fine. I'm used to it, Andy.
Wear it with honor.
Yeah, so I think the last thing that I want to touch on when it comes to filing your taxes and getting tax refunds is really the importance around opting to receive your tax refund via direct deposit. Because there's a lot of different ways. You can opt for a direct deposit. You can opt for a check to be mailed to you. You can opt to have it, in some cases, put on a debit card to be used. But the reasons I say use direct deposit is, one, it's faster, right? You don't have to wait for it to come in the mail like you would with a debit card or a mailed check. But more importantly, it's more secure. You don't have to worry about that check or that debit card getting lost or stolen out of your mailbox or while it's coming to your house. But it's also cheaper. If you did opt to have your refund on a debit card, you're likely going to have fees that you're paying for every transaction you use on that debit card. And so it's just going to slowly eat away at your refund. So you really get to keep more of your own money when you have it direct deposited. So it's a minor piece of filing your taxes, but I think it's an important one that people understand, like the benefits of using that option.
It also relates to what you talked about earlier, filing your taxes earlier instead of waiting to the last minute, because that fraud thing comes into play there as well, that there are sinister people out there who, through identity theft, try to file taxes on behalf of someone else and steal your refund, or create a false return and get a refund. And then you've got a big giant hassle on your hands to deal with the IRS when it comes time for you to file.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a great point, Andy. We didn't even touch on that scary part of all of this, which thankfully it doesn't happen. I shouldn't say it doesn't happen often. It's not something that you hear about frequently, but there was a rash of that happening several years ago.
And it's now part of your tax form. You get asked,
do
you have a special PIN because this has happened to you?
Yes. Yep.
All right. Great information as always, Jenna. Appreciate that. And once again, I'm sure there's a ton more about taxes and tax filing that we need to know. I mean, I don't even think anybody could possibly understand the entire tax code. I think it's impossible, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about more information about making good money moves. Where can I do that?
Yeah, as always, I encourage our listeners to visit our website at firstalliancecu.com. You can subscribe to our blog. We release new financial tips and advice every week. You can listen to past episodes of this show at firstalliancecu.com/podcast or on krocnews.com. You can also subscribe to Good Money Moves on Apple, Google, and Spotify podcasts. And if you love our show, please leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Of course, if you have a financial topic or a question that you would like covered on Good Money Moves, please send me an email at marketing@firstalliancecu.com. And of course, I strongly encourage you to reach out to our team at First Alliance Credit Union. They are here to help you start making good money moves today.
It is First Alliance Credit Union, federally insured by NCUA and an equal housing lender. Jenna, thanks a lot, and we'll chat again next week.
Absolutely.
With more good money moves on News Talk 1340, KROC AM, and 96.9 FM.